Get out, I don't care if you're in labor." Those were the last words Naomi heard before the door slammed in her face. A black woman, 9 months pregnant, abandoned by the man who promised forever. He chose his mistress over his wife's pain, leaving her to endure childbirth alone. But what Richard didn't know was that Naomi held a secret that would shatter his pride and expose the truth. A $20 million inheritance that turned his betrayal into her power. This is the story of a man who lost everything. Welcome, story lovers. Where are you watching from? Hit the like button and drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. Naomi's life had always been about quiet strength. She was a woman who carried herself with dignity, even when the world seemed determined to make her feel small. A black woman, married to a man who was highly regarded, in every social circle knew what it meant to live in someone else's shadow. Her husband, Richard, loved attention the kind that came from expensive suits, shallow praise, and showing off what he thought was his success. To the outside world, he appeared to be the perfect provider. But behind closed doors, Naomi knew. The truth, Richard's arrogance was built on borrowed time, borrowed money, and the illusion of power. Still, Naomi endured. She devoted herself to her marriage, pouring love into a home that was more hers than his, though he never acknowledged it. She managed the bills, balanced the finances, and quietly made sure their lives didn't collapse under his reckless spending. She never complained. She only prayed that one day he might value loyalty over lust, stability over show. As the months passed, Naomi's world became centered on something far more precious than her troubled marriage. The child she was carrying. Every flutter, every kick, reminded her that she wasn't just surviving, she was preparing for a new life. Despite her husband's growing coldness, she held on to hope. She decorated the nursery herself, painting stars across the ceiling, whispering promises of safety and love to the little one within her. But Naomi wasn't blind. She saw the way Richard's eyes wandered at parties, the whispers of another, woman's perfume clinging to his clothes, the late nights he excused with vague lies. She didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, she carried her silent strength, knowing that time had a way of revealing truths people tried to bury. What Naomi didn't know was that the night she needed Richard most, the night she went into labor, would become the night he revealed his darkest betrayal. The contractions started earlier than Naomi expected. Sharp, steady waves of pain gripped her body, leaving her breathless. She reached for her phone, her hands trembling, and called Richard. This was the moment they had both been waiting for, the night their child was finally coming into the world. She expected fear in his voice, maybe even excitement. Instead, what she heard froze her heart. "I can't make it right now," he muttered quickly. The background was loud music, laughter, clinking glasses. "Call an Uber or something. I'm busy. Busy." The word echoed in her ears like a cruel joke. She tried to remind him, her voice breaking between contractions, that she was in labor, that she needed him. But before she could finish, the line went dead. Richard had hung up. Naomi's chest tightened, not from the labor, but from humiliation. Her husband wasn't rushing to her side. He was with her, the mistress Naomi had long suspected. At that very moment, while Naomi's body bore the weight of creation, Richard was entertaining another woman, intoxicated by lust and lies. Tears streamed down her face as she dragged herself toward the door. Neighbors watched, whispering, but no one stepped in. She hailed a cab, clutching her stomach, praying she could make it in time. Alone in the back seat, she realized the cruel truth. Richard had abandoned her at the most vulnerable moment of her life. At the hospital, nurses rushed to her aid, but the questions cut deeper than the pain itself. "Is your husband on his way? Should we call him?" Naomi forced a weak smile, too proud to explain the humiliation. She whispered, "No, it's just me." Hours passed. Pain consumed her body, but what hurt most was the silence. No footsteps in the hall. No hand to hold. No voice to whisper reassurance. She delivered her child with tears of both joy and heartbreak joy for the little life she brought into the world. Heartbreak for the love that had been denied to her. Meanwhile, Richard reveled in his double life. At a lavish hotel suite, he flaunted himself before his mistress, boasting about how his wife was taken care of and how he was destined for bigger, better things. He carried himself as if he were the wealthy one, the powerful one, the man, with everything. His mistress believed him, why wouldn't she? He had perfected the art of deception, parading around in borrowed cars, slipping into luxury parties where no one questioned his stories. But there was one truth Richard had no idea about: Naomi's quiet fortune. Hidden beneath her humility was a $20 million inheritance from her late grandmother, a sum she had carefully safeguarded. Naomi never bragged about it, never used it to control anyone. She believed in building love, not buying it. And so Richard, blinded by arrogance, lived under the illusion that he was the provider. In reality, his entire life stood on the shoulders of the woman he had just abandoned. That inheritance was Naomi's secret weapon, one Richard and his mistress were about to discover in the harshest way possible. Days after Naomi gave birth, Richard finally showed up at the hospital, not with flowers, not with apologies, but with impatience in his eyes. He had the mistress on his arm, bold and shameless. Nurses exchanged shocked glances as he strutted in, pretending as though nothing was wrong. Naomi, still weak from labor, looked at the man she once called her husband and realized he had no shame left to lose. "You don't need to worry about me anymore," he said coldly, glancing at the newborn in her arms. "I've moved on. You'll be fine without me." The words cut deeper than any physical pain. He turned his back and walked out with his mistress, leaving Naomi broken yet burning with a new fire inside. But fate has a way of exposing truth. Only a week later, the mistress stumbled across papers Richard had carelessly left behind. Bank accounts are empty, credit cards maxed out, cars and suits on loans he could barely pay. Panic gripped her as she realized Richard wasn't the man of wealth he pretended to be. Then came the final blow. She learned Naomi was the one with money, a $20 million inheritance, untouched, quietly managed, and secured in her name alone. The mistress's confidence was shattered. The man she thought was her ticket to luxury was nothing more than a parasite. Richard, once smug and arrogant, now found himself cornered. The world he had built on lies began to crumble, and for the first time, he realized he had underestimated the very woman he tried to discard. Naomi's silence had been her power, and now, that power was about to turn into his greatest downfall. Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. Richard's downfall came, faster than he could have imagined. Once the mistress discovered the truth, she abandoned him without hesitation, exposing his lies to anyone who would listen. The whispers spread quickly through the very circles in which he once flaunted himself. His reputation shattered, his so-called friends disappeared, and the man who strutted around like a king was suddenly treated like the fraud he had always been. Meanwhile, Naomi thrived in silence. She didn't rush to announce her inheritance or prove her worth to anyone. She simply lived with dignity, raising her child in love and peace. Her $20 million inheritance gave her security, but her true wealth was her resilience. She had endured humiliation, abandonment, and betrayal. But she had emerged stronger, carrying not just herself, but a new generation forward. Richard tried to crawl back into her life, knocking on doors he once slammed shut. But Naomi didn't need to shout or seek revenge. Her quiet refusal, her unshakable independence, was revenge enough. For the first time, he realized that all along, the life he boasted about was never his. It was Naomi's. The impact of her story was bigger than just one failed marriage. It was a reminder of how society often underestimates women, especially black women, stripping them of credit while others bask in their strength. Naomi's journey showed that silence doesn't mean weakness, it can mean preparation. And when truth finally speaks, it is louder than any lie. So the question remains, how many more Naomis must endure betrayal before the world learns to honor the strength they've carried all along? Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more powerful stories and new videos every week.